We're good to go? Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, welcome everyone to our special meeting of council tonight. And we have a couple presentations coming. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please, to open up our meeting. Peter and Belinda. Moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that we do call this special meeting of council to order on Wednesday, April 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, our next order of business is the approval of the agenda. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago and John. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by John Paroff. Be it resolved that council does hereby approve the agenda as presented. Those in favor? And that's carried. So item number 4, council, is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof, declaration of conflict of interest. You can do that now or at any time through the meeting if such a situation arises. There is none right now, so we'll carry on. Item number 5 of our agenda is the presentations, and we have 2 tonight. And the first presentation that we're welcoming is, we have 2 presenters, Michelle Schalg and Caitlin Morrison. Sorry, I'm reading my agenda and not seeing your name on the same line, Caitlin. And we're talking about the Mobert First Nation land claim, and we have a presentation. So I welcome you to our council meeting this evening. I see Caitlin's on and Michelle. Okay, you're both here. Welcome to our council meeting tonight. And I'm sure you have a screen that you would like to share. You're both muted if you want to unmute yourselves. There we go.
Yeah, so Caitlin is going to share the screen, hopefully.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, hang on.
Okay, no, there's no, we don't need to rush at all. We're welcome that you could be with us tonight and present to us.
And I'm also going to just make sure I am able to share my screen here. Okay, 1 second.
So while Caitlin's getting her screen up, I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for having us this evening. We're pleased to be here to talk to you this evening. So my name's Michelle Schalg. I'm the senior negotiator on the file, and Caitlin Morrison is the associate negotiator. Can everybody see the presentation on the screen?
I can see it clearly. Yep, we're getting nods, yes.
Okay. So we're here today to present to you, following up from correspondence we sent to the township in February regarding Netmizaaggamig's Nishnaabeg's Aboriginal title claim, or formerly known as Mobert. So Caitlin, can we go to the next slide? So we thought we'd start off by providing a bit of information about Aboriginal title claims and what they are. So Aboriginal title claims are assertions by First Nations that the lands that they traditionally used and occupied were never surrendered or otherwise ceded to the Crown. So Mobert claims that they're not a party to the Robinson Superior Treaty, as they were not present at the signing of the treaty in 1850, and as a result did not adhere to the treaty and therefore continue to hold Aboriginal title. In 2006, the First Nation brought legal action against Ontario and Canada, seeking a declaration of unextinguished Aboriginal title to an area north of Lake Superior. You can go to the next slide, Caitlin. So exploratory discussions between the First Nation Ontario and Canada started in 2016 in an attempt to find a resolution to the litigation outside of the court process. And as a result of positive exploratory discussions, the parties entered into formal negotiations in September 2019, and these negotiations are ongoing. They're at a very early stage and are underway in a spirit of reconciliation, respect, cooperation, and partnership towards a renewed relationship. Next slide. So this slide shows the map of their asserted Aboriginal title area. And so Hornpain is located in sort of the northeast section. And you can see it's a large geography over which they're asserting Aboriginal title. Caitlin, can you go to the next slide? So the negotiations. So negotiations take time. They're quite complex, and there's much work to be done requiring cooperation and partnership to advance the important dialogue and map a path forward towards a negotiated settlement. We do anticipate that a negotiated settlement will include components of financial compensation and land, but we're yet to determine how these elements will be addressed in any settlement. In any land claim settlement, where Ontario is looking to have land considered as part of the negotiated settlement, there is a consultation process associated with that. And that includes consultation with other Indigenous communities that might be impacted by the negotiations, as well as consultation with the public and stakeholders such as municipalities, corporations, agencies, private property holders, and the list goes on. So any party that may be affected by the settlement of the claim. And the feedback from the Indigenous communities and third parties is really important to the negotiated settlement. Next slide. So the consultation process, so consultation within Indigenous communities and third parties takes place at key milestones as they're reached in the negotiations process. So in the context of these negotiations, and negotiations generally where you have potential land component, starts off by the parties identifying an area of interest. And that is really what has triggered the notification to the Township of Hornpain, as well as some other key stakeholders in the mining and forestry sectors, as well as neighboring Indigenous communities. And that was really to let you know that the negotiations are underway, that a withdrawal order has been put in place. So the withdrawal orders are orders under the Mining Act. It's an administrative process which removes Crown lands from being staked from mining claims. It doesn't affect any existing mining interests on the landscape, but it allows, it helps facilitate the negotiations process by preventing new staking on lands that have been identified from which the First Nation may choose their settlement lands. So you have the areas of interest. When we get to the next key milestone, which is candidate lands, that's where a more robust consultation process is initiated. So there's a little bit more certainty around the elements of the negotiations and the components of a settlement. And at that time, we would bring those lands forward, and it would be to municipalities, Indigenous communities, as well as anyone who may be impacted by the negotiations. And so we're not quite at that stage yet, but we're working towards that. So that would be the next stage. And then as we move towards proposed settlement lands, depending on how the negotiations are progressing, there may be additional consultation at that stage as well. So the feedback from the consultations is taken into consideration by the negotiation parties, and we work to reach consensus on the land components of the settlement proposal. So the consultations are really important to the negotiations, and they can take quite a bit of time to conclude depending on the complexities on the landscape. Important to note that in the context of land, Ontario and Canada don't take away private property from third parties to settle claims, and access to any private property is maintained. Where there is private property being considered, it is on a willing buyer, willing seller basis only. And then we have a link here to more information on our website about the land claim negotiations process. And I guess I'll just add one additional thing before I get into this slide. In the notice that we sent back in February, we also indicated that there was a notice of caution put on the mining lands administration system. So that is novel in the context of land claims, but that was done to alert industry that there's litigation in the area, that they should make informed business decisions, and that there may be enhanced consultation and accommodation required. And the caution notice would cover off for Netmizaaggamig the asserted title area that we showed earlier. So if somebody went to stake a new claim, a new mining claim, the notice of caution would come up and alert them to the litigation. So both the notice of caution and the notice of caution doesn't prevent any staking. The withdrawal orders do prevent staking, but neither affect existing mining interests in the sense of taking them away. But in terms of consultation, it does trigger, does notify proponents that there may be enhanced consultation. So even those with existing claims may be subject to enhanced consultation within that area depicted on the map. Next slide, Caitlin. So the benefits of settling claims. So negotiations give the First Nation governments an opportunity to work in partnership with the federal and provincial governments towards a shared solution. Negotiation settlements agreements are one of many steps towards achieving healing and reconciliation between the Crown and Indigenous peoples. They also resolve long-standing disputes about land in a balanced way. We're looking for win-win solutions that respects the rights of Indigenous peoples, benefits Canadians, and provides for a more respectful and mutually beneficial partnership between the Crown and the First Nations. And claim settlements can also provide new opportunities for investments in communities and economic development that can benefit the First Nation members and local and regional economies. In terms of next steps, so there's still a lot of work to be done. As I said, we're still in the early stages of the negotiations. Ontario will work with the Township of Hornpain as we reach key milestones in the negotiations process. So when we get to that candidate land stage, we would be reaching out again. While ongoing negotiations are confidential, we will ensure to update potentially affected and interested parties and engage key stakeholders as work on the negotiations tables move forward. So typically in a pre-COVID environment, we would do a lot of face-to-face meetings and host open houses and those types of things as forms of consultation. But given our current reality, we're looking at planning a virtual process to engage with Indigenous communities and provide information to interested public. So we're working on planning that right now. So there'll be more to come on that, and information will be posted on ontario.ca once it's available. And then there's my contact information, and I think we would like to open up the floor to any questions.
Well, thank you for the presentation, Michelle. And before we go to questions, would your counterpart like to speak? I'm sorry, everyone's very tiny on my screen, so I'm searching for Caitlin right now. There, I see her now. Would you like to speak before we go to questions?
No, by all means, go ahead. I'm the associate negotiator. I support Michelle Schalg and represent part of the Ontario negotiation team. So by all means, I'm here just to support and facilitate.
Okay, great. So I will open the floor up to questions for council. And you'll have to raise your hand because I really can't see people very well. Oh, thank you for removing the screen. Well, council's thinking about a few questions. I do have a few. So the first question, so is this qualified as a first consultation then with the municipality of Hornpain?
We do, at this stage, we do some early targeted outreach, and really we're just notifying the municipality that the claim negotiations are underway, and that we would be looking to have more detailed conversations once there's more certainty around the elements of the negotiation. So at this stage, it's really just letting you know that they're happening and that there will be more to come.
Okay, thank you for that. And is there, the follow-up to that question, is there information for the public where I'm not sure if it would be this the land claim negotiation process. So they could go to that on page 6 of your slide to get any more information on how this process rolls out in a general terms?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And one other question is in the process, is there a written submission part as well to the virtual process that's going to go forward?
There isn't, like, we will send out notice. We would have further discussions. We record all of those discussions. If the municipality wanted to provide written feedback, we're certainly open to receiving it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, I was thinking more about residents in the area and that sort of thing, how they would participate or how they could, but.
So typically we would have open houses. So in this context, we're looking at trying to do that virtually, in which people could participate and ask questions directly. Usually there is an opportunity to provide written submission. Contact information is provided if they wanted to submit things in writing as well. If, depending on where people are and what interests they have, but anyone who has any interest in the lands that are ultimately being considered would be notified directly as well of the negotiations based on their interests, and have an opportunity to engage that way as well.
Okay, so if they have interest, they can be notified directly. And if they own private lands outside of the municipality within this land claim, they will be notified that this is taking place as well, correct?
Correct.
We have a lot of cottage owners and that sort of thing that are residents of the municipality, but their cottages are outside of our community, and we want to ensure that they're being consulted.
Yes, so if they have property or interest in the vicinity of the lands that are being considered, then yes, they would be contacted directly. Perfect. Okay. That's all my questions right now. I'll open it back up for council. Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, welcome to our meeting. You mentioned during presentation that the negotiations and discussions are confidential, but you'll still release some information to the public. What information will you be releasing as you progress through different phases to the public? I'd like to know, please. Thank you.
So when we get to the candidate land stage, we will depict those lands that are being considered for potential inclusion in the settlement agreement. So there will be maps that would include the lands that the First Nation is interested ultimately having transferred to them and becoming part of reserve. So there will be more detailed information about the configuration of the lands pieces being considered. So that would be shared when we get to the candidate lands stage. Caitlin, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure. And in addition, so you've received sort of a fact sheet that provides some very high level information at this initial stage. So you'll also be receiving more in-depth written materials as well. So there'll likely be an updated fact sheet with more details about the land negotiations. We'll have probably more updated information on our website outlining the current land claims, and Netmizaaggamig Nishnaabeg's land claim is listed on that site as well right now. So yeah, we've got a number of communications products that we share with the public, and we have, of course, an email address and phone number that can be reached as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Stefanik. Any further questions from council? Okay, I'm not seeing any at this time. So how long should we expect to wait before the next session where we're consulted, or the open house, the virtual open house that will happen?
So that's a good question. Land claims are a bit tricky. There is no prescribed timelines. They do take time to reach each milestone, and some of it's dependent upon the complexities of the issues that come forward in the negotiation. So we don't have a set time frame. but we would be keeping you apprised of the key milestones as they arise, but I can't say at this point when that's likely to be.
Okay, a follow-up question to that. Within the guidelines that govern this process, is there a minimum timeline that the residents of Hornpain will get for this open house then? Like, I know we're dealing with our official plan and we have to give 20 days notice and that sort of thing. Is there any prescribed timeline that is the minimum?
At this point, there is not prescribed timelines, but, you know, because the consultations and the feedback actually is so critical to the outcome of the negotiations, generally we're fairly flexible and want to make sure that we've heard from anybody who has an interest. So consultations can go on for quite some time depending on the interest, but we try to make sure that we're aware of all of the interests on the landscape and any concerns before moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. And I open it up. Gail, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess for the benefit of our community, are we able to post the information that we receive on our website? I'm asking Michelle, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think this session is open, and so I think it's okay if you share the information.
Okay, just, yeah, we shared the PowerPoint presentation and that, so just to ensure that people are staying up to abreast of what's happening.
Yeah, and that has my contact information in it. If anyone should have any questions, happy to answer them.
Okay, and is there any other way that the municipality can help with the process so that we don't become a hindrance and that it moves smoothly? Just in your presentation, you talked about that it's a respectful and that we're moving through a respectful consultation process, and we want to be a part of that as well. So any ways that we can help, we surely will.
I think, and Caitlin, please weigh in, but I think just sort of that statement in itself is helpful. So we're working right now on starting the consultation planning phase and working with the First Nation. And I think them hearing that type of message would be very well received. They may reach out to you directly, not sure, to foster a positive working relationship with you. I'm not sure if the type of relationship you have with them right now, but we can certainly pass that on and consider it as we're moving forward, because I think that's really positive feedback.
Okay. Yes, I think that's I wanted to read it from page 3 where you said they're underway in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, cooperation, and partnership towards a renewed relationship. Within Hornpain's own strategic plan, we're looking at trying to be respectful of that and engage the ways that we can, and to have, we've had many First Nations people live right here in Hornpain for generations since the beginning of time, and we want them to know that they're always welcome in their hometown and in their homeland, of course. So, okay, if there's any further questions from council? No? Okay, well, do you have any wrap-up closing remarks that you'd like to give us this evening?
I guess I'd just like to say thank you for having us. If you have any follow-up questions after you've digested some of that material, please feel free to reach out. Caitlin and I are both more than happy to speak with you anytime. And thank you very much.
Okay, it was a pleasure having you tonight and meeting you both virtually. Thank you for coming to Hornpain virtually.
Thank you very much. We look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, so we'll, Gail, that information will go up on our website. Will we have our own special spot for this, or will it be under the agenda? I'm just wondering for an update.
Well, it's under the agenda right now. So, I mean, we could make a section for this if that's what council wants, or we can just leave it on the agendas, whatever you like.
Well, I just want it for clarity for when I'm talking with actually any media or just where the information can be found. So
It's probably better just to do what we did with the NFM, the forest management plan. Just do a section. It's probably
Okay.
easier to do it that way.
okay, and okay, I'll follow up with you later on where that section's found so that I can just be clear to give people that information so that they can be up to snuff on what's going on. Okay. Okay, we're right on schedule here, Council. We're moving on to presentation 2. So we have our draft official plan and draft comprehensive zoning bylaw, and JL Richards Consulting. Sarah is here with us tonight. Hello, Sarah. You're welcome to start and introduce yourself to our community again for those of them that are watching that don't know who you are.
Hi, thank you very much. So my name is Sarah Vereault, and I'm a planner with JL Richards in Sudbury. Taking over this project, my colleague Anne in our Timmins office had started it last year with the township. So you may remember she had come to a special meeting of council at that time. But I've been working with the township with Gail and Stacy since the fall. We've done a few consultation sessions, and now we're here to kind of move on to the next step. So before I say too much, I see I've been made the presenter, and I will choose. Okay, so I thought, let me pull up my presentation. You want me to pull up my presentation on my computer, Gail?
You will probably do a much better job of it than I will.
Okay. Just a second then. I'll need to locate it.
Yeah, you know what? I don't have it handy either. I just assumed you
Sorry
were
about that.
talk about that.
Okay. And okay. So I'm just opening it up right now. Okay. And here we go. I will adjust the size here. Give me a second. And let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, we can see it. I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So Gail and Stacy had asked if I could give a project update, kind of a status report as to where we're at in the process for the township's official plan and zoning bylaw documents. So we are in the process, as you know, of updating the township's official plan, which your current one is from the late 1970s, so in need of an update, and creating the township's first, so a brand new zoning bylaw. So far with the project, we've completed the following. So we have, as I mentioned, had that special meeting of council early last summer, pre-consultation meeting with the province in the summer of last year, where the various provincial ministries provide their input into what they want to see in the plan. We've had a few stakeholder consultation sessions, one in the summer and one in the fall, as well as a visioning session in the fall. That was a virtual visioning session, but well attended by residents of the township. After that, we prepared a background report along with our sub-consultants commerce management group. And then subsequent to preparation of the background report, we have now prepared the draft official plan text and schedules, as well as the zoning bylaw text and schedules. And I believe the council has copies of those documents. So I'm just going to briefly note on this slide, this kind of gives an overview of the review process. So we are now in stage 3 here, where we have prepared the draft text and schedules. So we'll speak a little bit about them tonight. And as I mentioned, council has the opportunity to review them. The next steps in our process are to hold a public consultation open house, finalize those documents, and then bring them back to council for adoption. And we're anticipating being able to do that sometime in the summer. So just very briefly about the official plan. So the official plan is your kind of higher level land use planning document. It sets out the municipal vision for land use and development within the township. It implements the policies of the provincial policy statement, which is a land use planning policy document that the province has at the municipal level. And it deals with matters of provincial interest. And generally speaking, it contains policies on land use and development within the township, economic development, housing, climate change, natural and cultural heritage, hazards, infrastructure, and then how those policies are going to be implemented and some Planning Act implementation as well. So again, just kind of generally, the OP is setting out kind of that general higher level broad brush land uses that we want to see in the township, as well as policies on servicing how your lands are to be serviced. And by that, I mean kind of with water and sewer, which lands are going to be with municipal water and sewer, and which lands are okay to develop on private services or alternative forms of servicing. It also has policies on land division. So if someone has a parcel, how can they split it up? What are the rules and kind of process that's going to be followed there? On the slide here, you'll see I've included just kind of a snapshot or a snippet of Schedule A, which is the urban area of the township. And I've kind of zoomed in here, and this is again kind of broad brush stroke. So at a high level, the yellow represents residential land use designation. So where we would see the concentration of residential uses. The red is a mixed use commercial designation. So that's kind of in the center of town along Front Street and also coming out along Becker Road, coming into town as well. And that allows for, if you look at the policies in the plan, the mixed use commercial designation allows for your employment type of uses on the commercial side of things, as well as for existing residential or higher density residential uses. And then the purple is an employment designation, and it kind of applies generally to the CN lands in the middle, as well as some industrial properties here. And employment kind of generally is referring more again to those industrial type of uses. We also have a future development area kind of rounding out what we'd see for the urban area of the township, that maybe those lands aren't ready today for development because of servicing or demand, but that in the future where we would see the town site growing could generally be in these areas. Oh, sorry about that. So that's kind of, and again, this is a draft at this stage. So certainly any comments from council or revisions that you'd like to see, we'll gladly accept those. I believe I have the rural schedule as well. So this is Schedule B, proposed for the rural area. And the vast majority of the lands in the rural area we're proposing is a rural designation. That's the white. So that's the majority of what you see here. And there'd be policies in the plan that deal with the land uses that can occur in the rural area. So generally that is things such as limited residential development, agriculture, mining and aggregate resources, as well as forestry. We also have this area kind of highlighted in a purple hatch coming out Becker Road and going to the east, which we're identifying as an area for rural industrial type of development. So that's where we'd like to see those types of uses go. This schedule also has a few lakes noted as shoreline development. So this is around Wicksteed or Bear Lake up in the north side of the township, as well as Spurline Lake here and First Government Lake here. So we've identified those three areas in particular as appropriate for shoreline residential development or tourist commercial types of uses. The schedule also identifies some natural features. So these are moose aquatic feeding and moose wintering area, as well as fish spawning. And there'll be policies in the plan that deal with the development of land where those natural heritage features occur. So someone might need to do additional studies, ensure they're not impacting on that feature, do some mitigation measures, that kind of thing. The schedule also identifies aggregate areas and waste management, because there'll be certain policies around land development in the proximity of those areas due to noise, for example, or dust around an aggregate site. We want to make sure that the aggregate resource is able to continue their use appropriately and not necessarily be hindered by residential development right next to an aggregate operation. So there are policies around those uses in the plan too. So that's kind of a general, very high level on the official plan. I'll now briefly touch on the zoning bylaw. So this is one that's going to be new for the township, and this is really the main implementation tool of your official plan. The official plan, again, sets out that high-level vision, kind of overall broad brushstrokes for the township. And the zoning bylaw then implements that on a lot-by-lot basis, and very specifically on the lot, kind of like you see in this little picture here, precisely where can the building be located? How much parking do I need? What's my setback from a lot line? As well as a detailed list of uses that can happen on each lot. So this is going to be a lot more prescriptive than the township has had before without having a zoning bylaw. But it's something that, as noted on the slide, protects the public interest by knowing, this is a residential lot. Here's what I can do on my lot. Here's what my neighbors can do on their lot. And we're all kind of following these rules. So it's protecting that public interest, as well as kind of the property values, by having these types of rules and regulations in place. So everyone's kind of playing by the same rules. It implements the policies, as I mentioned, set out in the official plan. And it is a bylaw, so it contains legally enforceable requirements. And it's a tool that the CBO is going to use as applicable law to determine if a building permit can be issued or not. And in cases where proposed development does not comply with the bylaw, it wouldn't be issued a building permit, or the proponent would need to submit a request to the township to review a zoning bylaw amendment or something. Can I do something a little bit different? Those requests would all come to the township to determine if those changes would be appropriate, kind of on a site-specific, each case, each application basis. So as I mentioned, the official plan. So this is, again, a copy of a little snippet of kind of the urban area of the township, that schedule that we saw before. The official plan is implemented by the zoning bylaw. So this is the schedule for the zoning bylaw in the same area. And I should have had a color version. It pops a little bit better, but we'd have kind of the same colors here. So in where we see yellow on the left in the official plan, we see generally kind of residential zones on the right in the zoning bylaw. So we see some R1s, that means residential, some R2s, that's residential. On the left where we see the pink, which was our mixed use commercial area, on the right, we see C1s and C2s. So those are our downtown or general commercial area, as well as highway commercial areas. And then similarly, on the left where we see the purple, which was our employment or kind of industrial uses. On the right, we see M, and M is the zoning moniker for industrial zones. So we have some industrial zones here. So that kind of matches up and shows you, again, this one is a lot more specific on each separate individual lot. We're going to be looking at it, whereas this one is a little bit more high level. So the zoning bylaw itself, as I mentioned, it provides regulations on permitted uses. So every lot has a certain zone ascribed to it. So a residential R1 zone is going to have a certain list of permitted uses. And those would be the uses that someone could do on that property. A C1 commercial zone is going to have a different set of uses. And those would be the uses that would be permitted on that type of property. The regulations are also going to provide building location, so setbacks, the size of the buildings, the locations for driveways, which would be under parking requirements, but kind of all of that is set out in each zone. There's also regulations on accessory uses. And these ones are typically some of the hot button topics. I know with talking with Gail and Stacey about them, these are the ones when talking with any municipality, sometimes the one things that are more difficult to regulate or deal with often fall under this accessory use category. So I definitely invite you to take a look at that. It's right at the beginning of our general provision section. And we have set out some recommendations on things such as there's accessory apartments or dwelling units. There are portable garages, so kind of those tent garages and regulations around that. Shipping containers is definitely one that we're seeing more frequently coming up for regulation. So definitely that's an area to take a look at in particular. There's also regulations related to requiring landscaping on certain types of properties, parking requirements. So each use will have a certain set of parking spaces required for it and more. So that was a little cheeky, but there's definitely a lot in there for you to review. It is very detailed. But what I might recommend is when you are taking a look at this document, review it and kind of think of how these zones or provisions would apply on perhaps properties that you own, properties that you're aware of, some different types of uses within the township. So kind of current property use, as well as thinking of how they might relate for proposed developments. So I know there are a number of kind of proposals in town. That's very exciting. And how this zoning bylaw and this type of regulation might relate to those types of developments. So in terms of the next steps would be kind of after the go-ahead from council would be to provide those draft documents out for public review as well. We do have a couple of additional steps in terms of public consultation. We would also provide the draft official plan documents to the province for what's called early consultation. The province is the approval authority for the official plan, so having them review it at a draft stage and provide comments back really helps us out in the approval process because we can respond and revise as a result of those comments prior to kind of getting to the end. So hopefully we'll have it, as I said, addressed a number of those comments. Following the documents being out for public review, we'll hold a public open house session, and that can be held virtually. So depending on the timing of that, we'll certainly work with Gail and with Stacey to come up with the right format for that. But in this stage, since we've been in this kind of new COVID environment for over a year now, we are used to having open house sessions virtually. So that's certainly something we're capable of doing. So there'd be a public open house session to have the documents available, answer any questions, receive any comments from the public. Following that, we'd look at making any kind of final document revisions, and then we'd bring them back forward to council at a public meeting under the Planning Act for council to consider adoption of those documents. So that's all I had for my the presentation piece, and I'll certainly welcome any questions or comments that council has at this time.
Well, thank you, Sarah. That was really informative and gives us a high understanding of where we're at. So just to clarify, on your next steps page, so the draft documents that we have now, it's up to council whether we want to release those to the public as of right now?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And the public meeting to consider adoption, that when the documents, after we've done the open public house and the residents and horn painters have had time to review and put their submissions in. Do we want to have public consultation again at that time during that public meeting to consider for adoption?
So that public meeting, that final one, is what's called a public meeting under the Planning Act. And so it does have kind of a prescribed process to it. So you'll open the public meeting, and at that meeting, the public is welcome to come and provide comments at that time. Ideally, we'd like to speak to people prior to getting to that public meeting, but certainly people are welcome to come and make comments or provide questions at that final public meeting. If we've kind of had all the input prior to that meeting, then hopefully we kind of go to that public meeting, I do a presentation, and then hopefully council is comfortable with adopting those documents. But sorry, as I said, it is a public meeting under the Planning Act, so the public is welcome to speak and provide their input at that meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because I was just, and if there's several comments that come in under that public meeting, it would just hold the adoption so that those comments could be included into the document, or
that's correct. So you have a couple of options. You could either, depending on the nature of the comments, you could either choose to say we're adopting them as is, or you could say we're going to adopt them with these amendments, and that could be done on the fly at that meeting. Or you could say, thank you for the comments, we're going to take them into consideration and come back with a decision at a later meeting date. So you have a few options there.
Okay, great. And that's coming later into the fall. So,
yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to open up the floor for council to ask any questions for Sarah. Go ahead, Councillor Stefanik.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Sarah. Thank you for a nice presentation. Under the accessory uses, say a resident had a storage container on their property for the last 22 years. Would they be grandfathered under that assumption because it was there for 22 years? Just a general question, because I'm sure there's some cases out there. What would be our action, prudent action as council to do, please?
Through your worship to the councillor. So existing uses would, as you kind of mentioned, receive kind of a grandfathering treatment under the zoning bylaw. So something that was there today and either doesn't comply with the use itself, or conform, meaning the use itself, or comply with some provisions. So maybe we have a house that's closer to a lot line than what we're proposing right now. Those things would be okay and are allowed to continue. When someone goes to make a change to their property, or that use potentially ceases to exist for a certain period of time, that's when we'd have to take a look in terms of if they're allowed to undertake the use again, or if they need to request a variance or some kind of amendment if they're going to expand that type of use. So sorry, I gave kind of a long-winded question, but short answer is a shipping container, say on a property that we're saying it's not permitted anymore, that would be allowed to continue as it had been. The other thing I was mentioning, and again, I'm saying a bit more, but the other thing that I had talked about a bit with Gail and Stacy was that some of these accessory type uses, and shipping containers is one example. Some municipalities are also choosing to regulate certain uses under a municipal act bylaw. And this allows for things like licensing of the use. And that allows for you to do things kind of on a go forward basis. So if the use is there, these are also used for recreational vehicles. Regardless of if it complies to the zoning bylaw, kind of on a go forward basis, all of these uses need to apply to the municipality for a license. So you do have two methods of regulating certain kinds of uses, and that's another venue that the municipality might want to take a look at.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Stefanik. Any other questions from council? Councillor Paroff, go ahead.
It's, are all these documents going to be available to the public like soon, or?
I was just talking to Sarah about that. That's our decision. We can decide that of when we'd want them released, and I would ask Sarah what her recommendation would be.
Okay, well, my thing was sorry about that. The schedule for the zoning bylaw, the 2 maps, I can't really see it. I couldn't download it or anything. So I was hoping to get a better copy so I can look at it a little closer.
Okay, yep.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
So
Sarah.
I believe council has the PDF versions of all of the documents, so that you should be able to zoom right in there on the PDFs and kind of see any sort of property that you're taking a look at. But certainly, let me know if there are any issues with that. In terms of releasing them to the public, so like I said, we have had significant kind of work with Gail and Stacey on going through the documents and revisions, and through our consultation, kind of the aim was that it would be documents that set out the municipal vision. So I guess we're just kind of looking for council's concurrence to be able to say, yep, these are kind of generally showing that proper municipal vision and can be released to the public. It's a draft stage at this point, so once they are released, then we'd be looking at comments from the public, and there's still plenty of time to make any revisions and get to our final documents.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that, because I did have questions on that about when. My one question was going to be when they would be released. So I was glad to hear that it's up to council. And Gail and Stacey, you're both satisfied with the documents as is, and we're ready to move forward with that?
On my part, I would say yes. I think they're very well done, and we have gone over them with a fine-tooth comb. I'm sure there'll be some adjustments and changes, but I think it's good for a draft for sure. Stacey?
I'm in agreement. I think they're well done, and we've council's had almost a few months to look over the draft so far. And Gail and I have spent, thanks to Sarah, extensive time going over them line by line. She's very patient, but I think it's a good draft, and I think it's time to put it out to the community.
Okay, great. And are we going to need a resolution for that, Gail, or it's just part of the process with council consensus, or what would you like?
I just believe it's part of the process, because we kind of asked for this meeting in addition to what is normally happening. So normally it would just have gone out under discussion. So we're good.
Okay, great. Okay, so that I'm excited for our community to see the documents and be able to give comment. And Hornpain, you're hearing that there will be a public open house happening. It probably during our COVID times will be virtual sometime this summer, and you'll have opportunity to comment on these documents. So they will be released on our website in the next couple of days, and you can review them and look at them. And if there's any further questions from council at the time for Sarah? No, I'm not seeing any. Okay, I just have one other question, Sarah, about the building permits. So if there's a special consideration going to be given to a specific lot or the person is looking for a consideration, within the plan itself, within the bylaw itself, does it state that consultation needs to happen with the existing homeowners beside them in the residential area or whichever area it is?
Okay, so you're asking about if someone wants to do something slightly different than what the bylaw normally permits.
Yes.
So there's a legislated process for that under the Planning Act. It's a zoning bylaw amendment or a minor variance. And either of those applications requires so the person would come forward, submit an application to the township outlining what they're proposing to do. They would include plans, they would include measurements, all of that kind of thing. Then the township would review the application It's encouraged that the applicant might consult with their neighbors, maybe give them a heads up of what's going on. Some municipalities have in their official plans require the applicant to undertake public consultation. Typically that might happen for larger types of development. So perhaps for like the hotel type of development, that might be a useful thing to go through. Sometimes for something where it's like, I want to do something on my residential property and it's small scale, might just encourage them to talk with their neighbors, identify what's going on. And that can certainly avoid a lot of questions coming right at the council meeting that are sometimes kind of misunderstandings or questions. So that can avoid that. The rest of the process would be the township needs to provide notice. So the township will send out notice or provide it in a newspaper if it's sent out, it's to properties within a certain radius of the application. That's all set out in the Planning Act as well. So it'll say the township has received this application, it'll describe what the application is, and it'll say you as the public are welcome to come and give your comments to the township on this application. And then the township would hold a public meeting again under the Planning Act. And so all of that is a legislative process. You're going to open up the public meeting. You're going to describe the application, say, does anyone have anything to say for or against? You'll take the comments. You'll kind of take that into consideration when you're looking at making a decision on each application.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was looking for, is just to ensure that each homeowner, like I might not have something special consideration I want, but maybe my neighbor is doing something and doesn't do that, doesn't come and talk to me for say, or what have you, and then I don't know. But so there would be a public notice given that this consideration is out there and that I could look into it through that avenue.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
So for minor variances, it's every property within 60 meters of the subject land, which is again for something that's a minor change. Perhaps you have a 2-meter setback and you want it to be a 1-meter setback. For a zoning bylaw amendment, which would be a little bit of a larger change, it's every property within 120 meters of the site gets a notification.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And I just, for clarification for council, I asked this question because I owned a property outside of the municipality at one time and I bought water frontage, and I actually had to get the permission of each of my neighbors to purchase that water frontage. So it was just trying to see how that would play in within the municipality zoning bylaw. So if there's no further questions, I know I don't have any. Gail, go ahead.
So Sarah, I'm just assuming that just leaving the public comment open, like the period open right till the open house, because there's no real cutoff time. Like we would just leave it out there as is for ongoing comments.
All the way up till the public meeting, I would say. Yeah. I don't think we need to put a date on it. We could kind of say we anticipate having an open house, a rough time, when we anticipate public meeting, kind of just to give those rough timelines. But certainly that there are plenty of opportunities for this formal type of input, in addition to just simply providing an emailed comment as well is fine as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And just to note that our website expert is off until Monday, so the documents won't go up till Monday because the rest of us would probably not do very well at it.
Okay.
If we want to be sure it's done properly, then we better just wait.
Right. Okay, so good to know. Well, if there's no other further questions, I thank you, Sarah, for coming tonight virtually to Hornpain and present to us our official plan and our zoning bylaws. I'm looking forward to these being implemented in our community and passed and adopted, because I think they're going to provide avenues for growth for our municipality. So it's exciting stuff.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Have a good night. Yep. Okay, Council, we're moving on to our next section down on our agenda, and we're into a closed session. So if I could get a mover and a seconder, please. Peter and Belinda. And Gail, just before I read this, are we still having issues with the people tagging back in? So if they get bumped out and they want to come back, just resubmit to the
Yeah,
link?
I don't think there's a way around it because we have two
Okay.
meetings running sort of on the same timelines. So yeah, that would be best.
Okay, so for the public that's with us tonight, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is very important information that we're doing in our community, and this exercise is important to our future. So as you heard Gail say, that the documents will be available early next week, and I encourage everyone to share those documents, read the documents, and remember that they're a draft document, that there is time for input. This is the first time Hornpain's doing zoning bylaws, and we want to get it right as much as possible, and we need and encourage your support and input. Okay, so for our closed session, moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by Belinda Kistemaker, be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting at 7 p.m. be closed to the public in order to discuss information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province or territory, or a crown agency of any of them, pursuant of Section 239(2)H of the Municipal Act 2001. Council, those in favor? And that is carried. None opposed. Okay, we'll meet you all in the closed session link. Okay, if we can get a mover and a seconder to return to open, Drago and Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the council, the corporation, the township of Hornpain does hereby return to open council at 7:26 p.m. And those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, just for benefit of our community, we did have a closed session. There is nothing to report from that session at this time. Following our agenda, we go to the adjournment. If I can get I have the confirmatory bylaw. Drago. And sorry, Peter. And moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Peter Kistemaker. Be it resolved that that bylaw number 1855, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at their special meeting of council held on Wednesday, April 14th, 2021, be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. And council, those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And finally, we have our adjournment. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda and John. Okay, moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by John Paroff. Be it resolved that we do adjourn this special meeting of council held on Wednesday, April 14th, 2021 at 7:28 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, great, council. It was good to see everybody.
Great.
Stay safe and have a good night.
Good night, staff. Great work. It's snowing outside, by the way. Take a look.
Yeah, I see that.
This con-
Thanks.